Welcome to ILTV's Israel Weekly. Our main topics today, a look at the region 25 years after the signing of the first Oslo agreements in 1993. And then later we'll discuss the tenets of the United States peace plan, whatever they may be, in the wake of the United States closing PLO offices in D.C. Joining me in the studio are steering committee member of the Forum Dvorah, Brigadier General in the Reserves, Israel Oron, former political advisor to Ehud Barak at the Camp David Accords and professor of political science at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, Professor Moshe Amirav, founder and executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Martin Sherman, and finally, journalist and member of the Likud Party, Naftali Ben-Simon. Thank you all very much for coming in today.
Good evening.
Okay. So, to begin, we will look at the first Oslo Accord signed September 1993. 25 years since the agreement was signed, the Palestinian Authority remains fragmented. Israeli security is still a major concern. Settlements have expanded, and borders have yet to be decided. Many, even including those who were inspired with hope by the signing of the Oslo Accords, have lost faith. Most have declared Oslo a failure. So if the prevailing peace initiative in the Middle East is a failure, then the question is, what's next?
I think it was a missed opportunity, for potential peace and just putting the country in a better place. I mean, it was a time of hope, that's why I came, because it was a time of hope. It was a time of hopefully that things were going to be turning around and that it would be better for not just the Israelis, but the Palestinians as well.
I believe now that Oslo is dead, with all the good parts of it and the bad parts of it, but it's dead. We shouldn't be mourning a corpse. We should have a new strategy, not to abandon the right of self-determination for the Palestinian people, not to abandon the right of building our own independent state, but to try to find ways and means to reach at that goal, different than the ways and means that we had used in the past.
أوسلو لم يحقق للفلسطينيين أي شيء، ولكن حقق للفكرة الصهيونية، هو السيطرة على الأراضي الفلسطينية وإقامة وشرعنة المستوطنات. هذا ما قدم أوسلو للشعب الفلسطيني، مزيد من التهام الأرض والسيطرة عليها. ونقول أن الكارثة الكبرى هي توقيع أوسلو.
As it is right now, I think most Israelis are willing to give up a lot of the territory in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, but not when we see the consequences, as we did with the Gaza Strip. We left the Gaza Strip, we got rockets. Don't want to leave the West Bank and get rockets in Tel Aviv.
All right, so to begin, we've heard a lot of different kind of opinions just now. Dr. Sherman, we'll start with you. Why do you think Oslo failed?
Oslo was a predicted and predictable failure. It never had a chance of success. Anyone who had a smidgen of a grasp of political science, the theory of a nation, international relations, knew it was going to fail. I have a number of articles here that I wrote in 1994 and 1995, predicting exactly what would happen. But let me read a short quote from Professor Kenneth Levine from the Department of Psychiatry at the Harvard Medical School. There were many cogent critiques of the Oslo process, but none addressed why Israeli leaders, supported by the nation's academic and cultural elites and much of the broader population, were pursuing a course that was demonstrably placing the nation, including their own families, at dire risk. Given the irrationality of Israel's course, the explanation had to lie in the real or psychopathology. Israel's Oslo diplomacy reflected a self-destruction, inexplicable except in psychiatric terms. In other words, it was crazy.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn now to Professor Amirav, and before I come back to you, I understand you would disagree.
Of course, I don't agree with it because there are many ways to analyze the past. The past is not something definite that we know everything. So I will tell you the way I recognize and understand the past. I think it was a big achievement for the Palestinians. It's the first time the Israelis recognized the right of the Palestinians to a sovereign state.
Whose side are you on?
And I'm on the side of the Hebrew University. The fact is that this was a moment of history. I mean, we wanted to get to peace. We didn't achieve peace. But if you ask me, I'm still optimistic. I think we will achieve peace. But in order to achieve peace, first, we have to acknowledge their right to a state, a Palestinian state. And today, the whole world, including many Israelis, believe that this is the only solution, to have a Palestinian state.
Brigadier General, Brigadier General, I'd like to bring you in. You know, first of all, where do you stand on this? You know, whether or not Oslo failed, and if it did, is there a way to maybe get back on track somehow? You know, what's your position?
I believe that it was breaking. I don't know how to put it, but basically it was breaking news for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict when we are talking about the mutual acknowledgement of each nation to the right of the other nation to have a state. So this is a historic. This is a historic moment, because till then it was only a zero-sum game. Because when we win, they lose. When they lose, we win. And it was an attempt that I don't claim that it was really fully successful, because I can see the reality. However, it was a change in the approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict from both leaders, from the Israeli leaders and the Palestinian leaders. This is number one. And number two, still we have some effects of the Oslo Agreement. First of all, the creation of the Palestinian Authority.
What an achievement.
I'm talking about what was signed in Washington 25 years ago. It was called, by the way, Declaration of Principles for an autonomy for the Palestinians. And this agreement, the plan was that this agreement will be a gradual agreement. It should create an atmosphere that both states will be the creation of a Palestinian state side by side by the Israeli state. So this was the attempt. The reason for why it was not fully successful and only partial successful is because of many reasons. Some of them lie in the territory of the Palestinians. I would say most of them, and some of them in the Israeli territory. I'm talking about the unwillingness of the Israeli leadership for the creation of a Palestinian state.
Maybe buses exploding and cafes exploding and other people, Israelis being murdered, had something to do with the lack of readiness to move forward.
There was quiet in between a situation where no buses were exploding and no violence was in the first 6 months after the Oslo Agreement.
Really?
And
That's
then,
a fact.
No, it's not a fact.
And then, as you remember,
there weren't attacks.
One moment, please let me finish, and I will finish in 2 sentences. And then what happened was the Baruch Goldstein massacre in Hebron. And then the buses started to explode. And this is one point. And the other point is that when the agreement was signed, everybody knew that some extreme forces from the Israeli side and from the other side will try to sabotage the agreement. It was no surprise.
Well, Naftali, we haven't heard from you. Why don't you weigh in?
Well, during my work in television in the news desk, we used to joke about don't let the facts kill your story. And Oslo Agreement was more of the same of this phrase. Don't let the reality kill the wind of change. We are bringing wind of change, maybe peace, maybe new era, maybe coexistence, but no dealing with the core issues of the Oslo Agreement. Not not Jerusalem, not the borders, no the West Bank, nothing. But wind of change.
Well, can I follow up then with something that Brigadier General Alon kind of said earlier? Was that the idea behind Oslo was not a from today to tomorrow we have peace. It was supposed to set up kind of an ideological change in order to slowly move things along. So isn't that sort of thing necessary to change anything?
Well, I'm telling you, if they were really serious, the Palestinians, because in the Israeli mode, we accept the Oslo agreement and we say, you know what, with the price, maybe there is something here, but maybe 2 months, 3 months after Yasser Arafat come to Gaza, and you already saw a new organization of a terrorist spot in other areas in Gaza and West Bank, smuggling arms and something like that. This is not attempting to make peace. This is something much bigger, which is just the beginning for us, and we will continue to the next step, and the next step is maybe taking Jerusalem and Haifa and Tel Aviv.
You know, the Oslo Accords were never an attempt at a two-state solution. They were attempts at a two-stage solution. And in fact, the jury is no longer out. The jury is no longer out because when the Oslo process began, there were proponents who promised benefits, and there were opponents who warned of dangers. Quarter of a century later, none of the benefits, a new Middle East, peace and prosperity, two states living side by side have come true, whereas all the dangers which the opponents warned of have indeed materialized. At some stage, you have to stop with this dismaying intellectual dishonesty, admit you were wrong, admit that you brought a terrible catastrophe, not only on the Jews, but on the Arabs as well, because if you want the biggest indictment of the two-state approach, that's Gaza. Everything that's happened to the Palestinians in Gaza is the fault of the two-state proponents.
Final response, and we'll move on.
Yeah. The idea of a Palestinian state is quite a new idea. Actually, until Oslo, everybody was thinking about a two-state solution, Jordan and Israel. The Palestinians were not counted. They disappeared in 1948. In Oslo, they came back as a state.
No.
Excuse me, I'm talking now. I would like to finish my sentence. In Oslo, it's the first time that Israel recognized the entity of a Palestinian entity that are going to be in a state between Jordan and Israel. This is a fact. Nobody can deny it. That's a fact. Now, what happened is that still there is Jordan, there is Israel, there is no Palestinian state. Now, the reasons are many reasons. I'm not coming to blame here.
Sure.
I'm trying to explain to my students when we speak about what happened from then to today, that this was the first agreement of Israel to a Palestinian state.
Okay, well, I'd like to come back to that topic, but first we're going to have to move on, unfortunately, and then we'll come back to that, and I want to touch upon that very soon. So, in just a week's time, the United States has declared the cessation of funds for Palestinian aid organization UNRWA and has ordered the closure of the PLO offices in Washington, D.C. These decisions, on top of recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, moving the embassy in kind, and largely ignoring many other concerns from Ramallah, have confirmed in the eyes of the PA that the United States is no longer a partner in peace. Still, the White House is reportedly gearing up to release their long-awaited Middle East peace plan, already being received in anger by the Palestinians.
I don't think they will ever introduce a plan because the whole world is rejecting this plan. The whole world is rejecting their ideas. They're already implementing their plan by changing the terms of reference provided for the peace process between Palestinians and Israelis, and this is not doable. The only solution is to implement Resolution 242 and 338. The only solution is to establish a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as capital on the 1967 lines and to resolve issues reserved for permanent status, including refugees, on the basis of Resolution 194.
Aaron, please, I would like to say something. I'm coming from a moderate country. I came here to Israel from Morocco. I know what is it to live with Muslims. Coexistence. I believed in peace. I believe in kind of solution that we live in with the Palestinians. But any chance of any other proposal will not work when a boy 16 years old is stabbing one of our colleagues here who used to sit here in this studio today and kill him during his talking on the phone. And after that, how can we talk about any chance when Palestinians are paying millions of dollars to terrorists who killed, who make some suicide bombing and other things. So what kind of education, what kind of lesson, what kind of message can President Trump bring to the Middle East when they are doing and they are continuing their religious war and not territorial war?
Reader John? Yeah.
Since I'm not running for elections and for the primaries, I will try to answer your
Nobody's
question.
perfect.
Yes, but I see around me perfect people. So I will try to relate to your question. The new policy of the Trump government does make sense in a way, because if the American policy is right now is if we give so much money to UNRWA, to the Palestinian Authority, to other entities in the West Bank and
coexistence programming,
yes,
everything's been cut.
Everything. We need them to listen to us. So what is the point to give to somebody money if you don't have any leverage there? Mm-hmm. So it makes sense. But the question is, what will be the consequences? And to be honest, I don't know really what will be the consequences, given that the current situation of the Palestinian Authority, Abu Mazen, and all the Palestinian government, it is right now, it's very weak also when you take into account the traditional allies from the Arab world. Mm-hmm. So since they are weak now, and this is they may come to the conclusion that they are ready to very extreme steps. And one of them is to turn the keys back to Israel of the Palestinian Authority. And why do I believe that this is dangerous for Israel? It's not dangerous in terms of security. It is not only, and maybe not in the short run, but then we are taking upon ourselves 2.5 million Palestinians that will have to provide all the services for them.
We are doing that every day.
No, we are not.
We are doing that every day. Security, water, everything.
Please, let me finish.
No, but
because the security issue,
the whole lecture about
we are now, even in the Likud, they are very nice to women. What I wanted to say is that security-wise, the situation will deteriorate. And this is very simple, because since they will not since the cooperation between the Palestinian security and the Israeli security will stop, all the security challenges will be the challenges of the IDF. So it is, I really don't recommend this way of acting, not for us and not for the Palestinian Authority. And the question is, what will the U.S. government do to prevent it?
So I'd like to, before you jump in, I'd like to actually go back to what we talked about earlier, Professor Amirov, and that is, really kind of what the American plan may entail, and what the prospect of that plan actually being adopted might be. Now, I understand that there's been a lot of rumors about a trilateral kind of agreement between Israel, Palestinian Authority, and Jordan. We already know that Jordan is pretty against a plan like this, even though some of the other Arab entities in the region are for it. Where's your position on this?
These are rumors that I hear from journalists in New York, not Israelis. And
well, I've actually heard this in Israel as well.
Yeah, so if I have to relate to the rumors, I'm saying that this is not such a bad idea. Although all the three countries, Jordan, the Palestinians as an entity, and Israel will be against it. But I think that this is an old idea, and sometimes old ideas might be very interesting.
Why would this be the best idea?
Because it will leverage the, I would say, the structure of the three states. The idea is, in my opinion, I'm not sure, but the idea is to have something like Benelux. in Europe.
Confederation?
Really?
It's a kind of a confederation.
All you need is the Benelux countries for that.
I'm very happy
All you
that
need
you are
is the
happy,
Benelux countries
but
for
it's
that.
not exactly what you think. It's
You know,
exactly,
Benelux is Belgium,
but there are other ways too.
Belgium,
So the idea,
Netherlands, and Luxembourg.
if I have to explain it in a very simple way, there are three entities. There will be three countries. They will be connected the way it is in Benelux. This is not a new idea. Much more before Trump, there was a guy, his name is Jabotinsky. I'm not sure you know who he is or
we've heard of him once.
Anyway,
Sure.
he's one of the first Zionists who actually later on the Likud was created on the basis of his ideology. And he was the one speaking about the confederation between Jordan and the Palestinians
I thought he
and
talked about
Israel.
the Iron Wall.
So that's history.
I thought he talked about
and
the
I
Iron
think
Wall.
that if Trump is coming with it, it's quite an interesting idea.
So I want to
this is
Well, I wanna hear kind of the
this is
warning here.
typical of the delusional clutching at straws of the left wing. You know, any plan.
But I come from the right wing.
Any plan.
From Jabotinsky.
any
Have you
plan-
heard about
any plan-
Jabotinsky?
Have you heard about the failure of Oslo? Any responsible Israeli planning for the future must look at the Hashemite kingdom as having a relatively short shelf life. Now, we don't know if it'll be replaced at all. But imagine if you now join the Palestinians and the Jordanians, and there's a regime change in Jordan, which is far from impossible. So you will have a radical Muslim state, starting from the fringes of Greater Tel Aviv up to the borders of Iraq. What could possibly go wrong? You know, it's a crazy idea. It's a crazy idea. There's some good elements in what seems to be emerging as Trump's plan. One, he seems to be taking the right of return off the table. He's already recognized Jerusalem as the capital. So there are positive elements. They will all be neutralized if Jordan is given some sort of governmental status west of the Jordan River.
All right, well, unfortunately, on that note, we have to move on. But at this time, I'd like to change gears to a more somber note, to take a moment to remember ILTV advisor, host, and Israel advocate Ari Fuld. Ari was killed this morning in a terror attack in Gush Etzion outside a shopping mall. He died a hero, fighting off and wounding the terrorist who attacked him before the terrorist could attack anyone else. Ari leaves behind a wife and 4 children, and I know I speak for all of us here at ILTV when I say that our hearts, our prayers, and our condolences all go out to the Fulds right now. And so in honor of our friend, I'd like to hold a moment of silence. All right. That's our time today for ILTV's Israel Weekly. Again, I'd like to thank our guests, Dr. Sherman, Professor Amirav, Brigadier General Oron, and Naftali Ben-Simon. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. Remember to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. We'll see you next week.